You know that person who watches every story, likes your posts, remembers what you shared last week, but their own profile? Frozen in time. Maybe a photo from 2 years ago. Maybe nothing at all. They're there. They're paying attention. They're connected. They just never post. And if you're that person, this one's for you. Because the internet has convinced us that silence equals absence. That if you're not posting, you're not participating. That if you're not visible, you're not real. But what if I told you that some of the most present people online are the ones you never see? We live in a world that celebrates the loud, the creators, the influencers, the people who turn their breakfast into content and their breakdowns into viral moments. But for every person posting, there are 10 people watching, reading, feeling, connecting in silence. These are the digital observers, the quiet scrollers, the people who engage with life online without performing it. And here's what nobody talks about. They're not broken, they're not scared, they're not missing out. They're just wired differently. Because not everyone experiences visibility the same way. For some people, posting feels like stepping onto a stage with a spotlight they never asked for. Every caption is a risk. Every photo is a judgment waiting to happen. Their mind doesn't treat exposure as dopamine. It treats it as danger. And that's not fear. That's their nervous system asking for peace. Let's talk about what happens in the brain of someone who doesn't post. Imagine you're about to share something, a photo, a thought, a moment that mattered to you. But before you hit post, your mind starts running simulations. What if people misunderstand? What if no one cares? What if someone screenshots this and uses it against me later? What if I look like I'm trying too hard? For some people, this is a whisper. For others, it's a siren. Psychologists call this social risk aversion. It's the brain's way of protecting you from potential judgment, rejection, or misinterpretation. And on social media, where context collapses and audiences overlap, that risk feels massive. Because when you post, you're not just sharing with friends, you're sharing with your coworkers, your family, that person from high school you barely remember, and the algorithm's idea of who should see you. One post, 1,000 different interpretations. So some people just don't, not because they have nothing to say, but because the cost of being misunderstood is higher than the reward of being seen. Here's the thing about social media. It flattens your identity. In real life, you're different versions of yourself depending on who you're with. You're one person with your family, another with your coworkers, another with your closest friends. That's normal. That's human. But online, everyone sees the same version of you. Your boss sees the same post as your best friend. Your parents see the same story as your college roommate. Sociologists call this context collapse. And for people who value nuance, privacy, and the ability to be multifaceted, it's exhausting. Because every post has to be safe enough for everyone, relatable enough for some, authentic enough to feel real. And when you try to be everything to everyone, you end up feeling like nothing to yourself. So some people choose silence, not because they're hiding, but because they refuse to flatten themselves into a single, digestible version that fits in a caption. They'd rather be fully themselves in private than partially themselves in public. And that's not weakness, that's integrity. Let's talk about energy, because posting isn't free, it costs something. For extroverts, social visibility can be energizing. The likes, the comments, the connection, it fuels them. But for introverts and highly sensitive people, visibility drains them. Every post is an invitation for interaction, and every interaction requires energy to manage. Should I respond to this comment? Why did they react that way? Do I need to clarify what I meant? It's not just about posting, it's about managing the aftermath. And for people who already feel overstimulated by the noise of the internet, adding their own voice to the chaos feels like volunteering for exhaustion. So they conserve, they observe, they engage selectively. They're not disengaged, they're just protecting their energy for the connections that actually matter. Because here's the truth, you can be deeply connected to people without performing connection for an audience. You can care without broadcasting that you care. You can be present without being visible. There's a paradox at the heart of social media. We're told it's a place for authentic connection, for sharing our real selves, for being vulnerable and human. But the reality? Most of what we see is performance, curated moments, filtered faces, captions that took 20 minutes to write so they'd sound effortless. And for people who crave real connection, this feels hollow. They don't want to perform authenticity, they want to live it. So they retreat to the places where realness still exists. Private group chats, long voice notes, one-on-one conversations that don't need an audience to matter. They're not rejecting connection, they're rejecting the commodification of it. Because when your life becomes content, it stops being yours. When every moment is evaluated for its shareability, you stop living for yourself and start living for the algorithm. And some people just refuse. They'd rather have 5 real conversations than 500 shallow interactions. They'd rather be known by a few than recognized by many. And that's not antisocial, that's intentional. Here's what happens when you post regularly. You start measuring your worth in metrics. Likes, comments, shares, views. And even if you tell yourself it doesn't matter, your brain starts keeping score. This post did well. I should do more like this. This one flopped. What did I do wrong? Suddenly, your self-expression is tied to external validation, and that's an exhausting way to exist. For people who don't post, there's a freedom in that absence. They don't have to wonder if they're interesting enough, funny enough, attractive enough, relevant enough. They don't have to chase the dopamine hit of notifications or feel the sting when the engagement is lower than expected. They've opted out of the validation economy entirely. And in doing so, they've reclaimed something precious, the ability to exist without needing proof that they matter. Because you don't need an audience to validate your experiences. You don't need likes to confirm that your life is meaningful. You don't need to post to prove you're real. So, if you're someone who doesn't post, I want you to hear this. You're not failing at social media. You're not broken. You're not missing out. You're protecting something sacred. Not everyone thrives in visibility. Not everyone wants their life to be content. Not everyone needs to be seen to feel whole. Choosing not to post isn't fear. It's discernment. It's knowing that some moments are too precious to share, that some feelings are too complex to caption, that some parts of your life don't need an audience. You're not hiding. You're honoring your boundaries. You're not disconnected. You're connected differently through attention, empathy, and presence. You're the person who remembers what others shared, who shows up in the comments when it matters, who reaches out privately when someone needs it. You're participating, just not in the way the algorithm rewards, and that doesn't make you less real. It makes you intentional. The internet wants you to believe that silence is absence, that if you're not posting, you're not living. But some of the richest lives are the ones never documented. Some of the deepest connections happen in private. Some of the most present people are the ones you never see. You don't have to shout to be real. You don't have to post to belong. Quiet is still human. And if you're someone who lives in the background, who watches more than you share, who feels more than you perform, you're not alone. You're just choosing a different kind of presence. And that's not just okay. That's beautiful. And here's the irony. I'm about to ask you to engage. If this video resonated with you, if you felt seen, if you recognized yourself in these words, I'd love for you to leave a like. It helps this message reach more people who need to hear it. And if you want more content that validates the quiet, the thoughtful, the intentional, subscribe. You don't have to perform here. Just show up when it feels right. And for those of you who are ready to break your silence, even just a little, drop a comment. Tell me, are you a poster or an observer? No judgment, just curiosity. Thanks for being here. Quietly or loudly, you matter either way. This is The Flow Switch. See you on the next one.